Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm SmurfSlaps, and today I wanted to talk about whether or not Space Marine 2 is still a game worth buying in 2026. Now, I will preface this by saying I love Space Marine 2. The campaign is one of the best gaming campaigns we've had in the last decade. The overall approach to gameplay is fantastic. The immersive experience you get is brilliant. The game artwork is fantastic. The cinematography is pure perfection. But there are faults and flaws with the game, and that's what we're going to talk about today, along with other things. So if you enjoy this kind of content, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more Warhammer 40k content, and let's jump into it. Released in 2024, Space Marine 2 is the sequel to the 2011 game Space Marine. Now, the original Space Marine featured Mark Strong as Captain Titus, one of the most impressive Ultramarine characters we had seen in years, and possibly the best portrayal of a Space Marine on screen that we had seen. Fast forward to 2024, and Lieutenant Titus is sent with two squad sergeants to defeat a Tyranid invasion. The campaign is fantastic. The art of the campaign, when you look at the cutscenes, they are just perfect. But there is an underlying problem. You see, when Space Marine 2 was released, it was £55 in the UK. That puts it among some of the most premium level games released in 2024. When you consider that titles like Call of Duty and Cyberpunk 2077 were releasing for similar money, it makes you wonder whether the game was worth it. Now, as we are right now at the beginning of January 2026, the game is actually on sale on Steam for 60% off, so it's around about £22–23. That's a great price for it, and honestly, if you are going to buy the game at any point, now is probably the best time to do it. But I want to address the elephant in the room. Whilst the campaign is fantastic, the multiplayer options are not the best. I am still finding it difficult to get onto online lobbies in 2026. I have only once managed to play an online PvE battle mode, and even then, it was a complete nightmare. Loading took forever, the amount of things that you needed to change in your settings just to be able to try and get the game to process things, it was a nightmare. And if you look online on forums and on reviews, the game still has this issue for multiple people. There are crossplay issues, there are issues with getting games to load, there's issues with frame rate drops. There are so many problems that the game has that they still haven't fixed. Over Christmas, I had a conversation with someone who works in software and gaming development. And one of the big pet peeves that we both share is developers releasing games that don't feel like they've been finished. Now, whilst it might seem archaic, games released in the early 2000s and the early 2010s, which were released direct to CD and disc, were released full and complete. Games now don't feel like that's the case. Cyberpunk 2077 is a prime example of this. When it was released, it was buggy, it needed all sorts of patches, it was a horrific fireball of a game. And this could be part of the problem with Space Marine 2. You see, they focus so heavily on getting the campaign right, and I applaud them for doing it, but they also lauded the multiplayer elements as being a key aspect of the game. Now, when you're trying to get the campaign right, there are obviously going to be bits that you focus on, which means other parts of the game suffer. But don't then laud other parts of the game as being as equally good as the campaign when they're not. And don't release a game when it's not finished. That's my opinion anyway. As of recording, there's still not been a patch that has fully fixed these issues, and it's very frustrating. If you paid full price for the game, you want the game to work. And that brings me on to my next point, the apprehension around new games that are being released in 40k's universe over the next 2 to 3 years, namely Dawn of War 4 and Total War 40k, alongside the teased release of Space Marine 3. Now, in Space Marine 2, we saw the implementation of microtransactions, and from my perspective, they did not make any sense. A lot of the chapter heraldries that you could unlock in Space Marine 2 came from purchases with the in-game currency that could be unlocked by grinding your way through multiplayer levels and campaign missions. Unfortunately, not all chapter liveries could be unlocked that way. Most had to be paid for. If you wanted Space Wolves and their successors, Ultramarine successors, Blood Angels, Blood Ravens, Dark Angels, Imperial Fists, the list was extensive. You could be spending half of the game's original price on DLC alone, and to me, that doesn't feel right. What we need to see from games like Dawn of War 4, Total War 40k, and when it releases Space Marine 3, is that adherence to what makes the game strong. That adherence to sticking to the basics. If the gaming studios stick to the basics of making an epic campaign and a decent online multiplayer, then that will make the games worth buying. My concern is that we are all getting sucked in with these fantastic trailers, and they are brilliant, by the way, and we're going to overlook problems, and we're simply going to pre-order games because of the hype that surrounds them, not because the games are worth the money. When you think back to games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare, World at War, and Modern Warfare 2, those games were released one after the other every year. But they were so good at doing the basics and getting things like that right that when people bought the games, they played them for 12 months until the next game came out. Now, there isn't that loyalty to games. A lot of the Call of Duty games are picked up for a month, played, and then dropped because they're crap. It's the same thing with Space Marine 2. We saw a massive drop off in the overall online play, and we saw the campaign being completed, but nothing else to be done with it. Then the studio released additional PvE levels, but if you're running into the issues of getting onto the online servers, that's no good to you. The continuation of the game stops at the end of the campaign, and because of that, the games are not worth what we're paying for them. As I said at the beginning, if you went and bought Space Marine 2 today, I think that would be worth the money. But if you bought Space Marine 2 at its peak price, that was a bit of a misstep. A lot of people do enjoy the games, but when you've got problems with the crossplay and the online multiplayer that you were told were going to be fantastic, it lets the game down massively. So what would I do about it? Well, realistically, there isn't much to do. I'm just a guy on the internet ranting and raving about something I can't change. When you look at things like Space Marine 2's multiplayer, and it's problematic and people are still finding these problems a year, 18 months, 2 years later, you do start to question whether or not the game studios actually care about the product they're releasing. But we can see in the gaming sphere that there are games out there that have made massive, massive splashes in the market and knocked blockbusters off the top and cost half their value. Look at Ark Raiders and Helldivers 2, not blockbuster titles and not massively expensive, and yet they continue to be played and enjoyed by fans for months and if not a year or two after release. They also don't break the bank. That's a key part of it. The industry as a whole has got too greedy and the consumer's just not there for it anymore. People turn away from big titles when they get too big for their own boots. I hope that doesn't happen within the 40k universe. We've already seen loads of complaints online about Games Workshop and their pricing model and strategy. The fact that it's pricing people out of the hobby already doesn't bode well for the future. And if you look at games like Total War and like Dawn of War, their previous installments haven't had the best of reviews. Because of that, you run the risk of people sitting there saying, well, I'm not going to buy the game on release. And because of that, suddenly gaming studios go, well, we're going to remove all support for the games before it's even got going. Look at Concord. 400 million plowed in by Sony. People reviewed it negatively. It lasted a week, maybe 10 days, and then was scrapped. I don't want that to happen because I think the Space Marine games have been a massive success and that the Dawn of War franchise is an epic franchise to have. It just had a small blip with Dawn of War 3. But that's just my opinion, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more 40k content if you're brand new to the channel, and let me know down in the comments, what do you think of Space Marine 2? Do you think you'd still pay full price for it today, or do you think things were a little bit overpriced when it was released? Until next time, guys.